Welcome to Branding the Beltway. I'm Stacey Piper, a 25-year government marketing expert and the host of the podcast that helps you level up your B2G marketing game with actionable insider tips and real-world case studies. If you're in the business of doing business with the government, you're in the right place. Each episode delivers straight-to-the-point strategies from senior marketing leaders familiar with navigating the unique world of GovCon. In each episode, we'll first explore that month's topic on a macro level, talking strategy with CXOs. Then we'll deep dive into the same topic on a micro level, examining the practical approach of development and implementation. We're talking brand awareness, content strategy, and the campaign tactics that actually move the needle. Whether you're a CXO, a growth strategist, or a marketing practitioner looking to strengthen your federal position, Branding the Beltway is your essential resource for driving results and winning more contracts. Let's connect strategy to execution and position your brand to win. Hello, and thank you for joining this episode of Branding the Beltway. I'm Stacey Piper with Piper Strategies, and today we're going to be talking with Michael Collins about the importance of authenticity in marketing. Michael and I first met in 2019 when he made the pivot from B2B to B2G marketing. Michael is the Senior Director of Marketing Communications at BTI360, which is a DMV-based software development company that provides big data software solutions in niche areas such as distributed search, machine learning, and cloud engineering. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks, Stacey.
Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So, as you mentioned, my journey is probably a little different than some of the other folks who work in our space. I spent a substantial part of my career in the commercial sector. I actually worked in e-commerce for more than a decade. And when I realized it's time for me to make a move, a friend connected with me with BTI 360. And honestly, I was kind of skeptical of going to work for a government contractor. I think I had some preconceptions. And when I came over and met the folks at BTI 360, I was really sold on the culture and the mission and what they were doing. And I was really honest when I interviewed that I didn't know anything about government contracting. I said, I know how to tell stories, I know how to drive actions and results, but I don't know all your acronyms. And they said, hey, that's great. And so I came over and I did have to learn a lot of acronyms, but it's been really an interesting journey. Having been an outsider, I think it gives me a slightly different perspective on government contracting. And so it's been cool to kind of learn from people like you and then also bring some of my history in and see kind of what the combination of those things looks like.
Michael, I love that. It's really great when there's a fresh perspective, because then it's not so much status as usual, and you get to challenge the status quo. I love that. So today we're going to be talking about authenticity in marketing. For those people who may not know what that means, especially maybe our CXOs who don't use marketing language all the time, tell us a little bit more what you mean about that.
Yeah, let me start by telling a story. So my background when I was in the commercial space was in leading creative teams. I actually, if you go far enough back, I started my career as a designer and a commercial photographer. And when I was a full-time creative, what I really loved was doing high production work. So I did lots of work that wasn't exciting and cool, but there were times where we would, rent a photo studio, hire models, makeup and hair, full support staff, art direction, and do some really cool work. And that kind of work is certainly really valuable when you're launching products and building a brand. But we noticed something that was counterintuitive, which was we would spend all this time and we would take a photo that reflected weeks of work and all this budget, and we put it up on Instagram, and it might get 200 likes. Then the next week, we would put up a candid photo that was just taken by a customer of the same item. So maybe they're at Comic-Con, so they take a photo outside San Diego, the convention center there. It's not styled. There's no makeup and hair. We put that on Instagram and it might get 3,000 likes. And I'll be honest, as a creative at heart, like I resisted the obvious conclusion, which was that when we put something like that up that was more authentic, people really resonated with people and we got a better response. And at BTI 360, I've seen a similar thing. Sometimes low production content on social media actually gets really great response and better than some of the more expensive more time intensive production that we've done. So uh, I would say I've come to this conclusion kind of against my will. But I think it's really, it's a powerful thing to realize how content that feels really authentic is compelling and it can drive really high engagement and ultimately business results.
So, where do you think the, I don't know, delineation is that, kind of consumers are so savvy right now that they can almost tell innately what is like marketing content highly produced versus what is more authentic?
Yeah, I think because we are inundated with so much media, we have learned to constantly evaluate what we're consuming and see, hey, is this something I should trust or not? So if it feels fake or inauthentic, we're naturally going to be put off by it. And we can tell when we're consuming that's something that's really highly orchestrated and stage managed in terms of marketing material. I also think that honestly, inauthentic content, a lot of it tends to feel the same because everybody's sort of aiming for the same things. They're using the same sorts of creative resources. And so it all tends to become somewhat homogenized. But the beauty of authenticity is that each individual and really each company, if you're really owning your own brand, is unique. And so that content then is unique. Maybe this is a little bit of a stretch, but if you're familiar with Brene Brown, she talks about um, in human relationships how vulnerability is really what drives closeness, intimacy, and relationships. Um, it maybe doesn't work exactly that way with corporate communications, but I think there's a parallel. When we let down our guard just a bit and we're more authentic, I think that that's compelling and people are drawn to that because it feels real.
I see what you're saying. One question I have, and I remember, earlier in my career when we were buying little handheld video cameras and trying to promote this kind of more viral, authentic, lower cost video content. One of the rubs, if you will, was with the business leaders who constantly wanted to approve storyboards and improve creative. When we took the high production out of the mix and everything became much faster, there was a sense of a loss of control.
Mhm.
What would you say to a CXO about that?
Yeah, I think that certainly this is very different in different contexts. And so the size of your company, the nature of your brand, the nature of your work is going to affect how you implement this. And so even if you have, a production crew and lights and all of that, there are still ways that you can aim at that authenticity and allow it to feel real. So I think, that's one thing. I'd also say for senior leaders, um, there's a huge risk in playing it too safe, being too, frankly, sterile in your communications. And so, what I would really encourage senior leaders, C-level folks to think about is how can you give your marketing leaders the space to experiment, let them know it's safe to zig a little when everyone else is zagging. So for me, what that would look like is being clear about the guardrails for their work. What's definitely out of bounds, and then letting them take some risks within those parameters. I think it's easy, and again, because of my background, having worked as a individual contributor creative for a long time, it's easy for people to forget that there is a risk that anytime you do creative work and anytime you share something that you've made, whether we're talking about uh, a marketing campaign, a video, a new logo, when you take the thing that you've built and you put it out into the world, you're taking a huge risk. And then if you're trying to embrace some of what we're talking about today, of being a little bit more authentic and allowing some of the humanity to kind of come through in your marketing, then that risk might be even greater. And so it's really hard to create authentic content when you feel like you're always at risk of getting your hand slapped, getting in trouble. So uh, I would just encourage the seed level leaders to do everything you can to make your team feel safe, to experiment and even color a little outside of the lines. And ultimately, while that may be scary at first, I think it's going to drive the results you want and actually earn you a lot of goodwill with the customers that you're trying to reach.
Michael, I love your candor there. When I was an in-house marketing leader like you are now, I aimed to build like a test and learn culture. That's what I was promoting up, pushing up to the C-suite. It wasn't about this authenticity in marketing. It was more about embracing some of the B2B, B2C digital trends that we were seeing in that time. But that resonated with them after kind of beating that drum for a while. Um, are there any do's and don'ts that you would want leaders to know with where this type of lower production, more authentic content would reside? Is this suitable for their corporate website? Is it more suitable for YouTube and social media? Where, what should they be setting as a guardrail as for the channel?
Yeah, great question. So I think um, social media is a really easy place to start um, because, again, you're competing with so many other people that are putting messages out, and the half-life of content on social media is a lot shorter. So I think that's a great place to start with more unscripted, if you will, content. For us, one of the places we see that, so BTI 360 is really big into learning and development of our team. We do a lot of internal classes, workshops. We go to lots of conferences. So um, we don't have professional photographers who go to the conferences, obviously. And so the team will just send us photos of them learning, of them having fun, sometimes people speaking at conferences. And, you know, as a former photographer, I would love to have really high production stuff, but it might actually not do as well because people can tell, oh, this is just a team of 7 people, software engineers out learning and documenting as they go. So I think that's a really safe place to start. I think something you'll see when you talk about like what you might put on your website, you'll see sometimes a really nicely produced video, beautiful lighting, beautiful background, all of that. Uh, and sometimes the editing style, they'll leave in some not bloopers, but the person will be introducing themselves and they might laugh and start over. And so you'll see in some corporate communications or even in documentaries on Netflix, leaving some of that in there. And all of a sudden it is humanizing and you realize, oh, this isn't a model. This is just a person who works at BTI 360 who's telling a little bit about, how they've grown and developed in the last 2 years.
I love that. And I really love when you guys redid your website, even the kind of the B-roll video footage you have, like, with no audio, but just the background for
Mhm.
some of your images, because it does make me feel like I know everyone over there, even if I haven't met them in person. And it makes me trust the brand a lot more. When we talk about this kind of overproduced content versus authentic or unscripted content, do you think GovCon is worse at this than other sectors?
I might have to be careful how I answer this, right? Um, I'll tell you again when I think back to when I moved from the the retail space, the e-commerce space to GovCon. One of the things I had to do was get smart on who was in the industry, and so I went to a lot of websites of other government contractors, and a lot of them, you get on the website, there's no photos of an office, there's no photos of the leadership team, there's no profiles of employees. And so I'd find, I might have been on a company's website a week ago and I hear their name again and I can't draw up anything. I don't have any hook to really um, use to start to retain information about them. So I think our industry certainly has its share of faceless, personality-less corporations. And some of that I think could be easily fixed, and we can talk about some strategies for that later. But I will say, to give us a little bit of credit in the industry, it is hard to take the abstract work that our delivery teams do and make it concrete and make it human. And then you layer in that, some government contractors do everything from building rockets to software to staffing. How do you represent all of that? There are security considerations for, what can be shared and what can't be shared. So I think it's interesting. Something I like to do is think about what are other industries that have sort of a similar challenge to what we're trying to do. So, for instance, think about insurance companies. Um, they're trying to humanize a really abstract thing. And so, one way you see insurance companies do that is they might talk about caring for your family, and when you're in need, we're there for you. That's fine, but I think if you do that long term, it can feel a little heavy. Uh, it might almost tend towards being depressing. So what do you see? You see insurance companies that have really goofy ads, celebrities, mascots. You've got the Geico Gecko. Back in the day, you had Snoopy for MetLife, Flo from Progressive, the Limu Emu, all these things. They are really dealing with this a different version, but the same problem that we have of how do you take and create something that's memorable and has some personality when your product maybe is not as easily visualized. Just it's fun to look at how other people solve this. And again, in our industry, this is going to look different depending on the particulars of your brand and your company. Um, but I do think to really answer your question, I think that our industry doesn't set the bar very high. And so I think there's huge opportunity for marketing teams who do work to make their communications more authentic.
The opportunity to differentiate. There are so many government contractors. It's a pretty saturated market. We're all going after the same customers, same agencies. And if everyone looks the same, you can't stand out. Like that even goes with the colors. Like I love that BTI's color is orange, right? It
Right.
stands out. You're so much different from everyone else in the space who's using blues and grays and greens. Um, one of the things that you said earlier that I just want to pick on here for a minute is you keep talking about showing people. And a lot of CXOs are concerned about showing their people. And sometimes their people are concerned about being seen. But
Yeah.
a lot of CXOs are like, oh, if I show my people, they're going to get poached, etc. And then us as marketers, we're saying we have to show our people, we have to position them as thought leaders. And when a government buyer is evaluating our bid response, the first thing they're going to do is turn to the key staff and see if they know anyone. So,
Yeah.
what would you say to a CXO when talking about this kind of people content, authenticity, and marketing about showing your people and kind of being unveiled in that sense?
Yeah, so that's a real challenge. And we deal with that as well at BTI 360. I think um, whether you're talking about a proposal that you're putting out there and you're trying to sell the government on your services, or for us, talent brand is a huge thing too. We're trying to attract talent. Um, Again, it's hardly anyone is ever convinced by something that's a total abstraction. We need to be able to, if we're looking for a job, picture ourselves working there. Like, what does that office look like? What does the culture look like? Can I, if I see somebody, maybe there's a hiring video out and I think like, hey, I could see myself, going to a happy hour and chatting with that person. Um, Key personnel you mentioned as well. When we can show the expertise of your team. So one of the ways that we do that is we've really encouraged our team to be engaged with industry, speaking at conferences and things like that. And so when people see the expertise of our team, see them on stage, we found that the benefits have really outweighed any negatives. And I think for us, part of that is making sure that we have a culture that people are really happy, and that doesn't mean nobody would ever leave BTI 360. But when we take good care of our people, we can be a lot less paranoid that if they're visible at a conference or on our website or somewhere else, that somebody's going to poach them away.
Absolutely. I see what you're saying there. And, if people really want to be, if they want to be found, if they want to leave, they're going to make that happen regardless of what we do with their social media content or thought
Exactly.
leadership, etc.
Yeah.
Um, Before we switch to the micro conversation of how to implement authenticity in marketing, do you have any final advice for C-suite leaders to promote greater authenticity in their own communications?
Yeah, that's a great point. So I think that obviously most of what I'm talking about and what we're thinking about is sort of your corporate messaging that goes out. But I do hope that every C-suite leader is taking to heart and practicing this in their own communications. So, um, figuring out what your authentic voice is and what you use in your messaging. So, uh, you know, get help from ChatGPT, or if you're at a size where you have a communications team, get their help as you craft the messages that you're going to share internally or externally. Um, but you have to be engaged in that process, and the end result has to be yours. If you turn over your communications, whether to a chat bot or to a team, your team is gonna the folks who consume that, again, externally or internally, they're going to sense that, and it's going to undermine your own leadership if it doesn't feel like this is actually coming from you. So I think, there's all these applications to the marketing world, and I get excited thinking about that. But even just at a human level and a leadership level, it's so important that everything we're putting out is authentically ours.
I love that. And yeah, there's so many, you know, executive leaders who don't really embrace social media, and they don't want to log into their own LinkedIn and comment on behalf of themselves, but it is really apparent to the consumers of that content whether it's that individual or not doing it. So it is so critical to have your own voice out there and be genuine.
Yeah, that's a great point too about senior leaders being involved with social media. Um, I, have found when we leverage our senior leaders, their social media presence, we get so much value from that. And I always tell folks at BTI 360, like, people are curious, like they want to know what's going on. Like they see, oh, that you're, now a C-level leader at a business. And so they are curious what you're thinking about, what you're looking at, what you're reading. And so when you start to share that stuff, people are really interested and they'll engage with it in a way that they might not with other people in the organization. So you're exactly right. When senior leaders embrace that, there's a huge opportunity for them.
I agree completely. They can be such an amplification of the corporate messaging. It's really invaluable. Excellent. When we come back from the break, we'll talk about how marketing practitioners can really drive authenticity in their marketing. This episode of Branding the Beltway is brought to you by Piper Strategies and Orange Slices. Piper Strategies, marketing that moves the needle. Piper Strategies is a full-service creative agency for leaders serious about growth. We decode the complex, translating mission-driven work into clear, compelling narratives. Our clients expand their reach, communicate with impact, and earn trust in competitive markets so they can win more work. We don't just deliver results, we build your internal marketing muscle. With Piper Strategies, clients grow with us until they outgrow us. It's a partnership-first, unagency approach that not only gets you noticed and builds credibility, but also scales your brand and your team. Learn more at piperstrategies.com. Orange Slices, fresh intelligence for B2G success. Cut through the noise with Orange Slices, a trusted source for public sector insights, teaming opportunities, and procurement intel. With a playful name and a powerful platform, they're serious about making data accessible and usable so the entire GovCon community can thrive. For resources, visit orangeslices.ai. Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. We're with Michael Collins from BTI 360, and we're going to now examine authenticity in marketing from the practitioner's perspective. So, Michael, we just had a great discussion about how marketers can either message up to senior leadership to drive this change, or what senior leaders should be thinking of. But now let's talk about how marketers can implement themselves or drive down to their teams how to achieve this authenticity in marketing. Do you have some tips to share with them?
Yeah, so some of this, I already hinted at, but let's just start with some really concrete things. Um, your website. Like, your website needs to show who you really are in a way that looks different from whoever your competitor might be. So it should have photos, it should tell about your leadership, whatever you can show off about your culture and sort of your unique distinctives. If you're able to share where your office locations are and maybe what your office looks like, all of those things are going to help me connect and have a more concrete sense of who you are. Um, whether you're talking about the website or really any of your marketing materials, I would encourage you to steer away from stock photography as much as possible, and use candid photos. So you can still hire a professional photographer to come in and shoot candid photos, but allow it to be of your team, and again, um, have it look nice, but feel real as well. We already talked about people, just having people as much as possible in your marketing, because ultimately humans respond to humanity. And so seeing other people, hearing their story, finding out about their journey, is going to be really powerful. Another area I would think about is social media. So I've kind of laughed as ChatGPT has become such a huge presence, because I feel like my default writing style is kind of like ChatGPT. And I don't really mean that as a compliment. It's like I can tend towards just this sort of generic polish, maybe lean too much into buzzwords. So what that means is I write a lot of social media posts that I end up deleting after I've written them and rewriting, because they're too generic, they're too polished. And so look for opportunities where you could maybe be a little bit unexpected at times. And I think whatever you're producing, whether it's a marketing campaign, a blog post, social media, a great question as you go through the editing process is, does this feel authentic? That's a great final question to ask. And as I've done that more and more, it definitely has changed the end product that I put out.
That's great. I want to pause on this topic a little bit about people in photos, especially on your website, because, right, we help a lot of clients with their websites, and a lot of our clients are smaller businesses, and they don't have a budget for, um, you know, professional photography.
Sure.
So I know that lots of times, if we are using stock photography, we try to pick photos all from the same series. So
Mhm.
at least we get the same office space and same set of models or people in the photos. Um, we also will try to use like stock photography sites that are a little less known,
Yeah.
in hopes of getting something that you won't find on someone else's
Yeah.
website in the space. When you are using your own photography, however, what are you guys doing, or what do you recommend that companies do with regard to photo release forms, and if someone leaves the firm, and all of those kinds of, very, brass tacks kinds of things that
Yes.
happen?
Yeah, great question. So when I came to BTI 360, I actually asked, and they did this. We added into our onboarding paperwork, just like I don't even know what all the forms are. Your I-9, you bring your passport, you bring your checkbook so that you can set up direct deposit. In that onboarding stack is a photo release for teammates. And we've never had anybody balk at that. If they did, obviously we would figure out how to work around that. But we know that for everybody that we call our employees teammates, everybody that's a teammate at BTI 360, I have a model release for them. Um, then we also, more than anywhere else I've worked, we have lots of structures and systems, checklists that we kick off when things happen. So if somebody offboards, one of those items is to go through and look and see if there's anything on the website that needs to be removed. Um, or anywhere else. So we do kind of have some checks in place to manage that.
And is it automatically, uh they have to be removed if they no longer work there, or if they're in a group picture like at a conference table, it's that model release covers the fact that you can keep them on the site?
Right. The model release would allow us to keep them on the site. And so in plenty of cases that may be the what we do for a while. It might depend how prominent it is, or obviously what the situation was. Um, but yeah, we actually haven't had a lot of difficulty in that respect, because we have fairly low turnover. And then we're always trying to create new marketing content anyhow. So the combination of those things allows us to keep things fairly fresh and avoid any complications that way.
Yeah, that's good to know. That always comes up. It always seems to come up because, people are humans and they move around and things change.
Yep.
So you mentioned earlier about chat GPT and how that kind of models, some of your initial writing style when you write social media posts. At a more abstract level, do you have any other tips for marketing practitioners on, not only generative AI for writing, but even for video and photography?
We could dive in more. Maybe we'll have time to talk about generative AI. And I think there are really smart ways to use generative AI that add a lot of value. I think there are ways that can ultimately kind of undermine what we're trying to do. Certainly being careful about how you use generative AI. When I think at a more abstract level about what it looks like to be authentic in our communications, think about writing, for instance. Um, Giving yourself permission to have a unique and distinctive voice, I think, is the first step in this. So, in school, we learn to write a specific way. And honestly, that can be impersonal and stilted. So, rules like you can never use the first person, no contractions. You can't start a sentence with this word. You can't end a sentence with this word. And so, I have sometimes when folks are working with me, say writing a blog post, they're concerned because in their head they have all these rules from high school or whenever they last took a writing class. Um, and a lot of those rules are great for academic writing, but they're relaxed when you get to more sort of normal writing. Even if you look in the newspaper, in a magazine, they're not following all those rules. So giving yourself permission to do that. And if you think about the great writers that we look up to, they're remembered because they had a uniqueness to them. So obviously, this isn't just an individual journey. Like it's something, depending on if you're on a marketing team, you have to be figuring this out together. And so as your brand scales, you have to create more structure so that more than one person can write in your brand voice. And the more distinctive that is, you have to define that. But that's why we create things like brand books and other guidelines that help sort of craft that. And so if you do that well, those tools can be a resource that helps you have an authentic and consistent and interesting voice across lots of marketing communications, maybe being produced by lots of other people. Another thing that I would really encourage any marketing professionals to think about is equipping your team to do marketing, to do your marketing. So coaching them on social media. So we already talked about that with C-level leaders, but even your rank and file coworkers, uh, giving them the resources, banners they can put on social media, content that they can adapt and post as their own, not just resharing your content, but actually making their own, equipping them when they go to conferences, encouraging them to put their own posts on LinkedIn or wherever they are about a conference they're at and what they're learning. Um, Hearing marketing messages from non-marketing people is maybe the most powerful thing out there. And so when you talk about authenticity, I think that's a really great avenue for marketing practitioners to pursue is not just doing it yourself, but equipping other people to do your job.
Absolutely. I love that we're talking about what we can do to really ready our team for this. Can you share where you've done this before with your teams, with your leadership, with your social media content and channels, and maybe what the outcome was, what you learned?
Sure. So I'm sure after we end this conversation, I'll think of lots of better examples. One of the first things that comes to mind was in 2021. So the year after COVID, we won a Best Places to Work award, and we had won, I think 10 times before that. So in one sense, it wasn't um, a new thing. But as we went to, I sat down with the CEO and we were talking about the blog post that we are going to put out. And again, this is a place where it's really easy to fall into formulaic PR kind of speak. And the CEO said, "Hey, honestly, I'm a little surprised. I'm grateful. Like we didn't get it right all of the time during 2020 with COVID. There were so many things that were going on, shutdowns, inability to work from home, hybrid." And he's like, "We didn't get it right all the time, but we tried to take care of our team and we tried to make changes when we realized we could do better." And when I heard that, I said, that's it. That's the message we go out with. We don't do the, we're honored to have won it again. We're humble, let's just be honest. Say, like, hey, it was a tough year and we made some mistakes, but ultimately we took care of our team. And so it means that much more to us after such a tough year that our team showed that faith, and they're proud of who BTI was during COVID. So I think that's an example. We started early on. So we have a really active internship program. It's a great program that helps software engineers really bridge from the academic, more abstracted computer science they learn in school to actually applying that, setting up an AWS environment and writing code and deploying it in the real world. And so now these are almost to the point of a cliche, but we had a day in the life video. One of our interns was pretty comfortable on camera, and I approached her and I said, "Hey, would you do a day in the life video?" And uh, that got such amazing response. And so really every year since then, we've done a video like that. And just this year, I sat down, I think we have 9 interns this year, and I sat down with them the first week they were here. And every intern in the room had watched that video. And so they were able to picture what it looked like to come and actually have an internship here and see how exciting that our program is. And so it was authentic, one, because it's not scripted. Most cases, the intern who's done it has shot it themselves, edited it in iMovie, and I just see it before it goes on social media to make sure it's fine. Um, but it's also authentic in the sense that there are all these internships out there that people are competing for, or that are competing to attract talent, and the students don't know what those look like, or which of those are legit or not. And so we find even when we're on campus recruiting, we're one of the only government contractors who actually has content that's tailored to college students, and so they're really drawn to that. And uh, it's not smoke and mirrors. I think we have a really great program. They're seeing what it really is. So I would say that's another area. Then maybe the last example I'll share is uh, a few years ago we had a teammate named Joel Goldberg. You can Google him if you're interested. He was our first person to retire from BTI 360. So we were about maybe 14 years old, and he was the first person who had retired. He had been a software engineer for 45 years. So he started out, um, you know, on mainframes, like with punch cards, and he ended his career with cloud computing. And so I reached out to Joel and I just said, "Hey, like it would be really cool if you would either do a talk or write an internal blog post about what you've learned across your career." And so he wrote this blog post of lessons from 45 years as software engineer. And so it was really an internal thing, again, authentic, like it was just sort of his farewell to the team. But it was so great. And so I asked, "Hey, would you mind if we shared this externally?" And so we did that, and it went on a site called Hacker News, and it went to the very top of Hacker News. Our website crashed because we got so much traffic. It was translated, picked up by lots of newsletters, translated into other languages. And even a year later or 2 years later, somebody posted it somewhere again, and we had a similar thing happen. And it was because it was a really, I mean, obviously there's a great hook there of like 45 years and the career that he had. But it was not really like a marketing scheme so much as just like showing off the really cool culture and the really cool people that work here. So that was probably the biggest splash we've had, and we've actually had people who have come to work for us, and they're like, "Yeah, I knew BTI 360 because I read that blog post a year ago." So it kind of highlights the long lead times too of a lot of the work we do. Where back in my e-commerce days, you were trying to track every click and every dollar, make sure the attribution was there. But some of these things take a year or two to really come full circle, and you see the value of them.
Absolutely. Well, and that's so true, even in the, especially in the GovCon space, like with the long sales cycle, that we are playing the long game. And I love that story. I remember, like, I think I was still helping you with PR during that time
Yeah.
when you were working on that story, but I never heard the outcome. So that's super exciting. And I always love your internship content every cycle, every summer on LinkedIn. So it's a good reminder that the authenticity really shines through. And what I heard you talking a lot about during that last segment was it really helps elevate your talent brand, right? And if, we know that like half of website visitors are usually going straight to the careers section, and you're getting a lot of those people from social media. And so to show your people whether they're your FTEs or your interns or your 1099s even, or your customers whenever possible. It
Yeah,
really helps elevate your talent brand and helps with retention and attracting key staff.
exactly. Yeah. Um, Talent attraction, as you pick up, is a big part of what we do. And so being able to tell these stories in different ways and with different folks and with different levels of disclosure, depending on what it is, has been a huge tool for us that has driven a lot of folks who they see BTI and say, hey, like, I like what you're doing. And it seems like you've got the real deal engineers there. So I could see myself being a part of that team.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate your time, Michael. I'm sure we'll have you on again next year. But in the meantime, go forth and conquer with your authentic content and elevating your brand.
Thank you. It's been great talking.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Branding the Beltway. If you're looking for an outsourced marketing partner or fractional marketing leadership who truly gets the GovCon sector, Piper Strategies is the team to know. We're not just here to deliver, we're here to empower. For resources or to inquire, visit piperstrategies.com.